In 2001, just days after Al-Qaeda attacked the United States, President Bush made a speech to Congress.
Every nation in every region now has a decision to make. Either you are with us or you are with the terrorists.
It was a controversial speech, but one person spoke out in agreement, Osama bin Laden. In their glossy magazine, ISIS quoted the terrorist leader saying, "Bush spoke the truth when he said, either you are with us or you are with the terrorists," and went on to argue that the blessed operations of September the 11th had meant the world was now in two camps, the camp of Islam and the Crusader coalition. Before the attacks, the world had been full of shades of grey, some supportive of America, some more critical. Among those more critical, there were many who, despite their issues with America, weren't supportive of extremists like Al-Qaeda. Then, because of America's violent response to the attacks, many of these moderates had radicalized into more extreme positions. A world with shades of grey was turned into one of black and white, and it's just what they had been trying to achieve. The article was written after the Charlie Hebdo shootings in France, and explained that attacks like this were designed to create a backlash from Westerners towards Muslims, and thus bring about the black and white world ISIS wanted. In fact, the title of the article was The Extinction of the Greyzone. As it wrote, eventually the Greyzone will become extinct and there will be no place for greyish calls and movements. As I've argued before on this channel, terrorism is rarely mindless, senseless or mad. There is a strategy to it, one that is repeatedly expressed in terrorist manuals, manifestos and documents like this. Extinguishing the Greyzone is one of the key strategic aims of terrorist groups, and sadly Hamas's attacks of the 7th of October have been successful at achieving just this. In this video I want to look at how this process works, why Hamas wants to provoke it, and how it's their opponents who are actually helping them succeed.
These are not just pro-Palestinian demonstrations, they're pro-Hamas demonstrations.
We know there is an underpinning of hate. Waving a Palestinian flag is not automatically anti-Semitism. And someone expressing grief for hostages taken is not an endorsement of dead civilians.
Muslims are not the enemy. Jews are not the enemy. We can disagree with people without demonizing them.
Okay, so why is polarization, this extinguishing of the Greyzone, useful to Hamas? After all, attacks against Israel push a lot of people to their side. Part of the desire for polarization is a desire for purity, a disgust for anyone who isn't fully committed. But there are also strategic benefits. After all, if Hamas can bring about a situation where all those sympathetic to Palestine move towards supporting them, it gives them a huge boost, more money, recruits and prestige. When Hamas attacked Israel, it would have expected a violent response. But provided that response doesn't defeat them, and there's a good chance it won't, then the brutality of Israel's reaction, broadcast around the world, ends up being a net benefit to them. Sadly, at least for opponents of Hamas, feeling more tribal and extreme is a natural response to violence. Scenes like this make us emotional. Then we're exposed to the behaviour of the opposing side's worst elements, pulling us towards the extremists on our own side. Or, at the very least, reducing our energy for criticising them. And of course, since the Hamas attacks of 7th of October, this is exactly what's happened. Israeli society, which for months had been strongly divided, quickly united, with support for peace negotiations dropping to the lowest level in over 20 years. Middle Eastern opinion has also hardened. Even though just a few months earlier there were protests against Hamas in Gaza itself. And in Western countries too, people have been taking sides. In marches, both pro-Palestine and pro-Israel, a big increase in anti-Semitic incidents, but also an uptick in Islamophobic incidents as well. And in polling, there has been a drop in those supporting neutral stances, with more people choosing to support one of the two sides. Maybe this is obvious, but more extremism isn't good for this conflict, at least if you want it to end. Peace agreements usually involve less extremism, not more, which makes all this tragic to see. But what's frustrating to me is that this process that Hamas wants, is being accelerated by distortion. One example of this has been the coverage of pro-Palestinian marches in the UK.
These marches are suffused with anti-Semitic slogans and rhetoric.
Disgusting young men and women praising a terror organisation.
Say they are marches for peace, but at the same time they are calling for jihad.
To my mind, there's only one way to describe those marches. They are hate marches.
Videos have circulated of protests apparently chanting Intifada, or Jihad Now, with the leader of the Holocaust Educational Trust describing this protest as an intimidating atmosphere for Jewish people. The protesters often use this chant, the critics say is evidence that the marchers want the eradication of Israel, while on the marches there have been cases of people explicitly supporting Hamas, as well as violence, intimidation, and anti-Semitism. The media have described protesters as a hate mob, reported how protesters have targeted poppy sellers who raise money for veterans, and called the protesters Hamas sympathisers. And even the BBC described the protests as
demonstrations across Britain, during which people voiced their backing for Hamas.
Okay, so there's two questions that seem important to me. One, is it true that the protesters are pro-Hamas? And second, if it isn't true, is it helpful to Israel to believe that they are? Well, obviously there's anti-Semitism here. I hate that, but sadly, as Hamas's polarization strategy bears fruit, I expect we'll see more of it. Yet, these are clearly not pro-Hamas marches. I mean, take the biggest march from the 11th of November. I went through the papers and social media and found all the signs or video clips I could that were criticised. In the end, I found 28, and some are really shocking. But even if there were 100 anti-Semitic signs, considering there were between 300 and 800,000 people marching that day, you're talking about a tiny, tiny percentage. Of course, if you look at footage or photos, you'll see most everyone is carrying one of the official signs. And while the most controversial clips are those that get traction on the media, the mundane reality on these protests is more, well, boring. It's also worth noting that there were many Jewish activists on the march.
I'm the daughter of Holocaust survivors. My mother was a survivor of Auschwitz, so I know quite a lot about anti-Semitism, and I'm standing here saying this is not the way to end the brutality of Hamas.
In fact, the earlier protest that some described as intimidating to Jews was in fact organised by a Jewish group. In fact, you can see the banners in the original tweet, and the chant wasn't Intifada or Jihad Now, but Ceasefire Now. When police investigated this claim, video emerged showing the poppy seller not being attacked in the way the media had claimed, with police criticising media reports as misleading and saying that they had no reason to believe poppy sellers were being targeted. And although I wouldn't personally chant from the river to the sea, its meaning is contested, with, I honestly think, few protesters seeing it as a call for the eradication of Israel. I mean, even one of those who was kept hostage uses the phrase. Here's her daughter describing her mother's beliefs.
I think her core beliefs have not shifted. She fought all her life to create a place between the river and the sea that is shared by both people.
Ideally, we could just poll everyone who went on the march and ask them whether they approved of Hamas's murderous attack on the 7th of October, but sadly we don't have that data. Another option, if you're nearby, is to just go on the march, talk to people and decide for yourself.
Yes, I do condemn Hamas, but I also condemn the Israeli government that are bombing thousands upon thousands of innocent people.
It's hard at this time to convince skeptics that these marches, whilst being pro-Palestine, are not pro-Hamas. That, after all, is the problem. This is an emotional time full of anxiety, anger and fear when tribal instincts take over. I mean, take that example of people mishearing ceasefire now. Doesn't that show how easy it is at times like this to mislead ourselves? Little fragments of evidence add up to an overwhelming impression that is ultimately not true. Another way to understand what's going on is to consider the opposite case. The chances are, if you're watching this as someone who's more pro-Israel, you're not an extremist. Yet here we have pro-Israel protesters in New York wanting to kill all Palestinians.
Kill all Palestinians! Wipe them off the map. I'm talking about every flatten them like a parking lot. I'm not stopping till all Arabs are wiped out.
Now it's the time that we need to erase Gaza. There is people inside, our people inside, that kidnap, and now we need to kill all of them and free Israel.
We might also consider pro-Israel commentator Douglas Murray, here talking casually about using ethnic cleansing as a way to, quote, put an end to this insoluble nightmare. Meanwhile, we have members of the Israeli government describing the Gaza operation as a second Nakba, or calling for an atomic bomb to be dropped on the area. To me, all of this is very extreme, to put it mildly. Yet it'd be a mistake to characterise every supporter of Israel as a supporter of these views. It'd also be a mistake to see every supporter of Israel as a supporter of ethnic cleansing, or even as a supporter of the current brutal military approach. This is also why I disagree with criticism that targets all of Israel, its whole society and culture, rather than its government. And it's why anti-Semites, especially those motivated by anger with Israel, are stupid as well as racist. Not all Israelis, and certainly not all Jews, support what the Israeli government is doing, and anyone who can't see that is not paying attention. But if you can accept all that of the pro-Israel side, then you should consider the same of the pro-Palestinian side. The truth is, most people are not extreme on this issue. They have sympathies, yes, but vanishingly few support Hamas or want to kill all Palestinians. Distorting reality is bad, but the real problem is that mischaracterizing everyone who's not on your side as an extremist doesn't help your side. Smearing everyone who's sympathetic to Palestine as a Hamas supporter doesn't make Israel safer, just as characterizing all Jews as genocidal doesn't help Palestine. When either side lies about their opponents, all it does is push reasonable people away from the centre, alienate those who might be won over, and strengthen the extremists, which is, after all, the whole strategy behind the terrorist attacks that began all this. The only real end to this conflict will come with a political agreement that moves away from extremism. So doing anything that works against that just helps those we should all be united against. Hi, my name is Brennan and thanks for watching. If you found that interesting, the next video you should watch is this one, all about the terrorism trap. It was inspired by what's going on in Israel right now, but the idea behind it is one that applies much more generally.